Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of What Happened. Today we're telling a story that's going to give you chills. And I mean that literally. This is about a Colombian singer named Yeison Jimenez who had a premonition so specific, so detailed, and so terrifying that when it came true, it left an entire nation speechless. This isn't just another celebrity tragedy. This is a story about dreams, destiny, and the thin line between intuition and fate. Picture this. You're a successful musician. You've got everything going for you. Sold out stadiums, millions of fans, a loving family. But for weeks, you keep having the same nightmare over and over again. You're on a plane, something goes wrong, and you die. Most of us would probably just chalk it up to anxiety or stress, right? But what if those dreams were trying to tell you something? What if they were a warning you couldn't understand until it was too late? That's exactly what happened to Yeison Jimenez. And the way this story unfolds is going to leave you questioning everything you think you know about fate, premonitions, and whether some things in life are just unavoidable. Let me take you back to the beginning, because Yeison's story isn't just about his tragic end. It's about an incredible journey from absolute poverty to becoming one of Colombia's biggest music stars. Yeison Orlando Jimenez Galeano was born in Manzanares, a small town in Caldas, Colombia, in 1989. This wasn't a glamorous childhood by any stretch of the imagination. We're talking about a kid who started performing at age 7, not because he dreamed of stardom, but because his family needed money. By the time he was 14, Yeison was working in wholesale markets, carrying heavy crates of produce to help support his family. But here's what's incredible about this guy. While his days were spent doing backbreaking manual labor, his nights were dedicated to music. After exhausting shifts at the market, he would come home and practice singing, writing songs, and dreaming of something bigger. Most kids in his situation would have given up, but Yeison had something special, an unshakable belief that music was going to be his way out. And let me tell you, the genre he chose wasn't going to make things easy for him. Yeison specialized in música popular, which is essentially Colombia's version of regional Mexican music. Think rancheras, but with Colombian flavor. This is music that comes straight from the coffee-growing regions of Colombia, and it's all about telling the stories of working-class people, their struggles, their loves, their heartbreaks. For years, Yeison performed at local venues, small bars, anywhere that would let him get on stage. He was building his reputation song by song, performance by performance. In 2014, he started getting national attention, and by 2018, his single Aventurero became a massive international hit, racking up hundreds of millions of views on YouTube. But 2021 was when everything changed. His song Tu Amante reached number 16 on Billboard's regional Mexican airplay chart, making him the first Colombian popular music artist to ever achieve that milestone. Think about that. He broke a barrier that no one from his genre and his country had ever broken before. This wasn't just success, this was history. By 2024, Yeison had become a phenomenon. He sold out Bogotá's Movistar Arena 3 times in 1 year, drawing over 40,000 fans total. But the real career-defining moment came when he became the first Colombian regional artist to sell out El Campín Stadium in Bogotá. We're talking about a venue that holds over 50,000 people. He had gone from carrying crates in a market to filling the biggest stages in his country. And it wasn't just about the commercial success. Yeison's music resonated with people because it was authentic. He never forgot where he came from. And his songs spoke to Colombia's working class in a way that felt real and honest. He wasn't just an entertainer, he was a voice for people who felt forgotten. But despite all this incredible success, despite having everything he'd ever dreamed of, a loving wife, 3 beautiful children, a career that was reaching new heights every year, Yeison was haunted by something he couldn't shake, a recurring nightmare about dying in a plane crash. Now, this is where the story gets really eerie. In December 2024, just weeks before his death, Yeison did an interview with Colombian TV station Caracol where he talked openly about these dreams and the way he described them. Guys, it's going to give you goosebumps. He said, "I dreamt 3 times that we were going to have a plane crash and that I had to tell the pilot to turn around. And when he arrived, he'd say, 'Oh, boss, thank goodness you told me because something went wrong. But I fixed it. Get in.' But it gets even more specific." He continued, "And in one of the dreams, I dreamt that we had died and that we were on the news. and it was the third time I dreamt that. God gave me 3 signs, and I didn't understand them. I didn't get them 3 times. He had the same dream 3 times. And in one of those dreams, he saw himself and his team dying and being on the news. How do you even process that? How do you go about your daily life when your subconscious is apparently trying to warn you about your own death? But here's what makes it even more chilling. Yeison had already experienced problems with aircraft before. In that same interview, he revealed that he'd been involved in an emergency landing just 10 days before his son was born. He described feeling something go wrong during takeoff, the plane starting to rock and realizing they were in serious trouble. The plane takes off, and as it takes off, I feel something go puff, puff, he said, describing the moment he knew something was wrong. They had to make an emergency landing because water was coming out of the engine. So, this wasn't just paranoia or general anxiety about flying. This was a man who had already had a close call and whose dreams were becoming increasingly specific about how he was going to die. And the most heartbreaking part? He believed these dreams were messages from God, warnings that he just couldn't understand how to interpret. I believed the dreams were a warning from God, he said. But how do you act on a warning like that when your entire career depends on traveling? When you have concerts booked, fans waiting, and a team depending on you? Which brings us to January 10th, 2025, and the day that would prove Yeison's nightmares weren't just dreams, they were premonitions. Yeison had performed the night before in Boyacá, and he was scheduled for an evening performance in Maranilla, near Medellin. This wasn't unusual. Colombian artists often travel between cities for multiple shows, and private aircraft are pretty standard for successful musicians who need to cover a lot of ground quickly. The plan was simple. Take off from Juan José Rondon Airport in Paipa, fly to Medellin, do the show, and continue with the tour. Yeison was traveling with 5 other people: his manager Jefferson Osorio, his team members Juan Manuel Rodriguez and Oscar Marin, his longtime photographer Weisman Mora, and the pilot Fernando Torres. These weren't just colleagues to Yeison, they were family. Weisman had been with him for years, documenting his rise to stardom. Jefferson had been by his side managing his career. These were the people who had helped him build his empire, and they were all together on what would become their final journey. At approximately time, the Piper PA-31 aircraft, registered as N325FA, began its takeoff from the small airport in Paipa. And this is where the story becomes absolutely heartbreaking, because according to witnesses, you could hear people shouting, "The runway is run out," as the plane attempted to take off. The aircraft struggled to gain altitude. Within seconds of leaving the runway, it crashed near the La Romerita River between Paipa and Duitama in Boyacá. The plane burst into flames immediately. All 6 people on board were killed instantly. The emergency locator transmitter activated right after takeoff, but by then, it was too late. Videos shared on social media showed the wreckage engulfed in flames, and the reality of what had happened began to sink in across Colombia. Yeison's worst nightmare, the dream he'd had 3 times, the premonition that haunted him for months, had come true in exactly the way he'd described. He had died in a plane crash, and within hours, he was indeed on the news, just like in his dream. The irony is absolutely chilling. In his final Instagram post, which is still visible on his profile, Yeison had written, "Recuerden, si la carreta suena es porque va vacía." Remember, if the cart makes noise, it's because it's empty. Fans are now reading this as a final cryptic message, though we'll never know if he intended it that way. When news of the crash broke, Colombia went into mourning. Radio stations immediately began playing his music non-stop. Crowds gathered outside venues where he had performed. Fellow musicians took to social media calling him their brother in music. The entire country felt like it had lost not just an artist, but a piece of its soul. The official statement from Yeison's team, posted to his Instagram, read, "Today we say goodbye not only to an artist, we say goodbye to a son, a brother, a friend, a human being full of dreams and courage who transformed his story into hope for thousands of people. Yeison embodied perseverance, discipline, and love for his community." But what makes this tragedy even more profound is how it's forced us to confront some really uncomfortable questions about fate, free will, and whether some things in life are just predetermined. Think about it. If you had recurring dreams about dying in a specific way, what would you do? Would you stop flying altogether? Would you trust the warning and change your entire life and career? Or would you, like Yeison, continue living and working, hoping that the dreams were just anxiety playing tricks on your mind? The truth is, there's no right answer. Yeison's career required travel. He had fans waiting for him, concerts booked months in advance, a team depending on him. Even if he'd wanted to stop flying, it would have meant essentially ending his career at its peak. And maybe that's the most tragic part of this story. Yeison knew something was wrong. He felt it in his bones. He even spoke about it publicly. But the circumstances of his life and career made it impossible for him to avoid the fate he feared most. Some people have called this a self-fulfilling prophecy, suggesting that his fear of flying might have contributed to his nervousness or decision-making on that final day. Others believe it was genuine divine intervention, a warning that he received but couldn't properly interpret. But here's what I think makes this story so haunting and so important. It reminds us how fragile life really is, especially for people in the public eye who often take risks that the rest of us never have to consider. Yeison Jimenez was at the absolute peak of his career. He had overcome poverty, broken barriers in his industry, become a voice for millions of people, and built a legacy that would have lasted generations. He had a second show scheduled at El Campín Stadium for March 28th, a show that would never happen. At just 34 years old, with over 70 songs to his name and 8 albums under his belt, Yeison's story ended far too soon. But in the weeks since his death, something beautiful has happened. His music has taken on new life, streaming numbers have skyrocketed, and a whole new generation of people are discovering the voice of this man who refused to let poverty define his destiny. The investigation into what caused the crash is still ongoing, but for his fans and family, the technical details matter less than the incredible legacy he left behind. Yeison proved that with enough determination and talent, you can rise from carrying crates in a market to filling the biggest stages in your country. But his story also serves as a sobering reminder about the price of fame and the risks that come with life in the spotlight. How many other artists have had similar premonitions or fears but kept them private? How many times do we ignore our instincts because they don't align with our responsibilities or ambitions? What happened to Yeison Jimenez is a tragedy that transcends music, celebrity, or even Colombia itself. It's a story about human intuition, the weight of responsibility, and the impossible choices we sometimes have to make between our fears and our dreams. His wife and 3 children are left to carry on his legacy, and his fans will continue to find comfort and inspiration in the music he created. But for the rest of us, his story serves as a haunting reminder to pay attention to our instincts, to cherish the time we have, and to never take for granted that tomorrow is guaranteed. That's what happened to Yeison Jimenez, a man who saw his death in his dreams and couldn't escape the fate that haunted him. It's a story that will make you question everything you think you know about destiny, and whether some things in life are just written in the stars. That's it for this episode of What Happened. This one was heavy, guys, and I want you to know that my thoughts are with Yeison's family, his friends, and everyone who loved his music. What do you think about premonitions and dreams? Have you ever had an experience that made you question whether some things are just meant to be? Let me know in the comments below, and remember to hold your loved ones a little tighter tonight. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that'll make you think. I'll catch you guys in the next one.